Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrops. I am Mike, aka Veteran Crypto, and with me for Money Talks on Mondays is Taylor and sometimes his business partner Jeff, who's probably having technical difficulties right now. but we'll deal with that here in a minute. So how's it going?
Good. Well, Jeff, he's in a conversation, so he's coming back from that. It's going good. It's going good. If those who get our newsletter saw that ETH went bullish today, so now it dropped back down below. If it closes below, it's going to go back to neutral, but it flipped. So Ethereum is on the still neutral.
Well, let's go ahead and before we dive too deep into this, let's go over some of the socials. So if you're not watching us over on YouTube, if you want to join the conversation, by all means, jump into DeFi Crypto and Airdrops. You can jump in the chat. You got the blockchain report. My buddy Jeff, that's on the show on Tuesdays and Fridays. Jake Call and David. Jake is the founder of Metrics Finance. Great portfolio tracking tool if you're into DeFi. He's on our Wednesdays DeFi masterclass, as is David, who is just on another level when it comes to creating delta neutral positions and just the very advanced DeFi. If you're looking to learn, he's a great resource. Like Taylor was talking about, we have our DeFi Wise with a Z newsletter. If you'd like to get that Monday through Friday, me and him both get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and put that together. Has a ton of great alpha. And it kind of gives you just a quick 5-10 minute summary of what's going on in the markets, both traditional and crypto. Gives you some ranges in both for trading and in DeFi for some of the more popular pools like USDC wrapped ETH. Taylor, if you are in Texas and interested in getting your legal affairs together when it comes to wills, trusts, small business formation, things like that, he is based out of McKinney, Texas, and is obviously a licensed lawyer, owns the law firm, but he can definitely help you put together ways that you can protect your wealth. Not just in this life, but after you pass and it passes on to your family, ways to mitigate taxes, things like that. Also, Jeff, once he's here, him and Taylor, like I said before, are business partners. This is, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about this after I introduce it, but this is basically just Jeff is a financial advisor and is basically the traditional finance investing version of a lawyer, and is the way he kind of explained it to me as far as credentials. But they help people not just structure their wills and trusts, but actually help them invest in traditional markets. I think as DeFi and crypto matures, that they will probably dive deeper into that and assist people with that. But I think they're kind of waiting for a little bit of more the legal guardrails, from the, as far as laws and, things like that before they can dive deeper into that. But do you want to go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about this, Taylor?
Yeah, so it's our RIA, and we do a little bit different. We don't believe you can beat the market. So most financial advising firms are investment advisors. And really the reality is, in today's world, you don't need somebody to invest your money. You can invest it if you could probably in about 5 hours of study learn what ETFs you need to buy, and you can do what your financial advisor does. So the only real way a financial advising firm offers you any benefit is through structure and mitigating taxes. And so that's what we do, is we help people structure, mitigate taxes, and then talk them off a ledge when they get scared and different things like that. But the reality of the markets that you're in is the market is what we call completely efficient. In other words, the market is so large. When I'm talking about the stock market, it is so large, complex, that any idea that you come up with to get ahead a little bit, ultimately in the end, will get absorbed by the market. And so what we do is we just structure things. We protect people from their downside risk. And in order to do that, we go through people of all different wealth and situations, and we try to help them the best we can in structuring their lives in the best we can do. And so that's kind of what WG Plan is all about. It's about structuring and offering what we can in the market to certain individuals. Unfortunately, a lot of things that we do, if you're not an accredited investor, you can't do them. That means you have $1 million worth of investable assets. And so that, but we do a lot of structured products that are out there. And that's kind of what on Jeff's side that we do. Or with
Awesome.
WG.
Well, here, let me bring this up. And let's go ahead and dive into this a little bit. So I'm going to blindside you a little bit, and I'm wanting to talk about. I'm seeing a lot of talk on crypto Twitter and across the markets about paper gold and now paper Bitcoin, and how institutions, banks, governments have leveraged this tool for both positive and negative aspects, depending on how you look at it. But I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm talking about with paper gold and paper Bitcoin. Maybe you can kind of break it down for the viewers on kind of what it is and how it's used in both positive and negative ways.
So let me start off with kind of the negative. And I think silver is the perfect example of the negative that is caused. Right now, if you notice, silver is shooting through the roof, and it's because through paper, basically fake silver reserves that institutions and governments claim that they have. What has happened with silver over this year is its price has shot through the roof because in the real world, they're not producing enough. And silver is used, it is the best conductor that we have for energy. And so it is used in all sorts of technology. And because there has been this artificial suppression of the price of silver, financial institutions and governments right now are in big trouble because they have been suppressing it for so long that the reality is there is not enough silver in the world for what we need. Mm-hmm. And so when companies are going to buy actual silver, they were buying it at the price that the governments were setting, but there's not enough mines out there because at the price, the companies weren't making enough money to invest in them. And so now we have a huge shortfall of silver. So London is usually what controls the price of silver. I forgot what the name of the place off the top of my head, but because London has been suppressing, they are basically out of silver right now, and they've had to borrow a ton from China at a very high price, and they can't get the price to come back down because the reality is we need a lot more than we have. So what paper allows people to do, it makes it more efficient. So when people can buy things through contracts instead, when we say paper, that's what we're meaning, through contracts and not the actual silver, you don't have to actually receive a silver bar in your house. But what that's allowed governments and financial institutions do is lie about how much they really have. Mm-hmm. And so what you see going on right now is because people are going on and buying, trying to buy the actual silver, there isn't enough. And because price has been suppressed, capital markets haven't been able to get enough money to generate enough money to build more mines. And so Now you have a serious problem, and there's speculation that silver at the demand, if they can't find a lot more, get a lot more quickly, its price could go anywhere. Is that I think it was at the high was $65 an ounce just recently, but or maybe that was the ETF value, but it's projected to go anywhere from $200 to $600 an ounce. So yeah, it's a serious, and it really is a problem. And gold, of course, everybody knows that's what's been done with gold for a long time. And now they say they're not doing it, but I have a feeling that's what they're doing with Bitcoin and other assets. Is when you're going and buying the paper version, they aren't really going and buying actual Bitcoin with it.
And maybe let's touch on the difference between an ETF, like paper Bitcoin, or gold or whatever, and then a tokenized asset. Because I really want people to understand, what each of these are and how potentially they could affect price. Because I think that's what's important to understand with a lot of the people that got excited about ETFs, and the people that see news articles where such and such organization or such and such government bought this much gold, this much Bitcoin, and they're like, okay, why isn't the price moving? If they bought 10,000 Bitcoin, why is the price of Bitcoin dumping? So I want people to understand kind of what these offerings are and how they do and don't actually affect the markets.
Yeah, so let me look it up and see what an ETF is required to buy.
Because I know some of them have to actually have, by regulation, they have to have or hold the asset or an equivalent in reserve, to be able to offer that, but others not so much. And I'll be honest, I do not know. I just know that, I wish Jeff was here as well, but I know you and Jeff are much more, but much better educated on this topic.
Yeah, so there are some that instead of actually buying, like Master actually owns Bitcoin. Like he goes and actually buys Bitcoin when he does this. It depends on the actual ETF, what they actually say that they're going to do. So you have to actually look into it. Are they just buying future contracts or derivatives, or are they actually buying the actual ETF? And so, or the actual asset. My trading account, I buy IBIT, and they say, well, this is BlackRock's. They say they actually buy Bitcoin. But how much do they actually buy? Are they buying and selling through their wallet? That's a big question, because a lot of these financial institutions, especially with crypto, because it's not regulated, they can get around a lot of the rules that they're required to do. And so I believe IBIT is actually buying, because that's what they say that they're doing. Now, but when you look out there, how much is going into these ETFs to buy, you would expect the price of Bitcoin to be going up a lot more than it is. And so that means, at least in my opinion, that what they're saying they're doing, a lot of these companies, they're not really doing it. And so, but this has been done with gold. This has been done with silver for a long time. And so it's one of the problems of the financial institutions and the government is, behind the scenes, they work out deals where they artificially keep things down, and so in this situation, I mean, the ETFs, the paper contracts that we're getting for Bitcoin and stuff, it's good because most people aren't going to go get a wallet and hold Bitcoin. It's too scary. Like, I do estate planning for clients, And I can tell you, I have a lot of clients that have passed away that owned Bitcoin in wallets, and their heirs cannot get to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is one of the biggest problems with Bitcoin is these wallets are a great idea, own your own thing, but if nobody has your passwords or keys, I don't care.
It's well, they say not your keys, not your crypto. If it's if you don't have the keys, it's not your crypto. So that's one of the reasons, not to kind of shill the product here, but that's why it's so important to speak to an estate planner such as yourself, lawyer that can put together their estate that has a deep understanding of these emerging assets like Bitcoin and crypto, and that understands the importance of ensuring that those keywords are or those keys are properly documented, so that when that person passes, that the heirs get access to that. Because otherwise, you might have $10 million in Bitcoin, but if you pass and nobody knows how to access that, it's basically worth nothing.
Yeah. So about 3 months ago, I had a client come in. He's retired now, but he was a school teacher that bought a bunch of Bitcoin and he's held it.
Was it our dad?
He definitely would not be a guy that's going to buy Bitcoin.
No.
But he's holding a considerable amount. So he retired. And in that meeting, I said, does your wife know how to get to this? And he goes, no, I tried to explain it to her. And she goes, it's just too confusing. And I go, I want you to imagine something right now. He dies right now, has a heart attack and dies. Like, you guys have about $6 million worth of crypto.
Mm.
You can't access any of it.
Ever.
And he goes, well, I go, does she know where these passwords are? Well, I put it in this this binder that I have. I'm like, well, that's great. But it's like, I have an attorney in my office. Her husband passed away. He died about 5 years ago. He had a bunch of Bitcoin. She cannot figure out how to get into it. She goes, I have no idea. He would not share his passwords or anything. And I'm like, and she does what I do. She's an estate planning attorney. And she did not take the time out to figure out, how do you get into this wallet? And he took no time to teach her. And so it is a huge problem with Bitcoin, is that issue of, while it's great for the person as long as they can get into their wallet, it's horrific for everybody else. Now, a lot of arguments about like, oh, the Bitcoin, it's actually, what is happening with Bitcoin is it will become more valuable over time, because so many people when they pass away, don't transfer the actual coins to their heirs because they keep it in a wallet. And so there's tons of Bitcoin that are lost every day. I want to imagine it like, if the world had 10 million gold coins, and it was in this magic purse, that people had, that if they didn't give someone a password to, they disappeared. Well, gold coins over time are going to get more and more valuable, because there's going to be less and less of those gold coins. And that's what's happening with Bitcoin is, as people pass away, people are losing these coins.
Well, you hear the stories all the time, of, people that, especially back at the beginning, that, just kind of as a joke, or, just a maybe, they bought Bitcoin back when it was, single digits or double digits or low triple digits. And, you hear about the guy that is, computer. He had it on the hard drive, back in the beginning before a lot of these more modern wallets, and threw the computer away. And, of course, Bitcoin went up, and this guy spent years and years and years digging through the landfill trying to find this computer.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have a buddy that I laughed at back in 2011 when I got back off my last deployment. We were at a barbecue, and I'm wanting to say that Bitcoin was like $100 or somewhere around there. I'd have to look, but he was telling me about Bitcoin, and I laughed at him. I'm like, it sounds like something that dorks in their mom's basement trade like Pokemon cards. It's digital money. I thought it was a joke, and to my own demise. But he did it, and I talked to him years later, and he had $500,000, but he had misplaced his keys and wasn't able to access it. So he still has the hard drive, he just can't access it. So yeah. It's a very real thing that you need to make sure that you get your affairs in order. The purpose of this Monday show isn't necessarily to teach you how to make money. It's to teach you how to protect that value. And that might be, from how to mitigate taxes. That might be on ways to invest to lock in that value and, mitigate your downside risk and earn yield through DeFi or other investments, real estate, things like that, traditional vehicles. But a big part of that is, especially even if you're younger, you don't know if you're going to die of a heart attack, a stroke, get hit by a car. You might be on a treadmill and just keel over. If you do not have your affairs in order on how your family can access your assets, you might as well, light them all on fire. Because, especially things that, not even crypto, just traditional stuff. If you don't have a will, and, Taylor, I'm sure that, you can get into some horror stories on this. The government is going to come in and they're going to decide what happens to your assets. And a lot of times they end up with them.
Yes. And so it is hard. I understand, like people that might be listening, you love crypto and you can't get your spouse or your kids or anybody else to get into it. But, I've had to repeatedly tell my wife, like, we hold a bunch of money in these accounts. Here are the passwords. Here is how you get to it. And she kind of shrugs me off. I know she can reach out to you, Michael, and you'd be like, all right, I know how to get to it. But it is a real issue. And that is why, the paper version, holding in a trading account for most people is going to be an easier system. And so I like it for that reason, because the financial institutions, they'll handle it. They will, they're supposed to keep the Bitcoin, safe. If they lose it, it's on them. They can insure it themselves. So if they, did have a hack or anything like that, they would be responsible. But ultimately, it does not affect the price of Bitcoin the same way.
Exactly. So the cons of, just to kind of recap, the cons of paper Bitcoin, paper gold, ETFs, things like that, is that it doesn't move price, and you, as of right now, can't really use those in things like DeFi, where you can't take out loans against them and things like that. But the pro is that if you're not tech savvy, if you don't understand, hot and cold wallets and, how to buy, crypto and, how to use DeFi and things like that, it removes the barriers to entry and allows you to invest in these assets without a very steep learning curve. So it's a great way to get exposure to these assets, potentially while you learn how to leverage these assets in a more advanced way.
Yes. And so if Bitcoin closes, because everything's kind of gone down today, if it's going to close down this low, though, we will probably go back to a bearish trend on Bitcoin.
Let's see. Let me check out Coin Market Cap.
Yeah, Bitcoin and ETH and everything has gone down, but kind of everything in the market's gone down today.
Well, let's do this real quick. So Here's coin market cap. So right now, Fear and Greed is at 24. Market cap is down in the 24 hour about 3.5%. Let's see. Bitcoin's down about 3.6% on the 24 hours. Ethereum's down about 5, just under $3,000 per token. XRP, pretty much, it looks like about 5%. Looks to be about the average that a lot of these are down, as far as the top 10. But I've been watching a lot more about, I've been ignoring price. I see price as an emotional trigger and a way that, and emotion is a way that is used to manipulate people, across many, in many different ways.
Yeah.
In markets, it's something I learned in the military, as far as, ways to influence people, things like that. Emotion is not a good way to invest. So what I choose to do short term, you can use that in trading because obviously, you're looking for short term gains and, you want to, trade what's happening on the, 15-minute or the 5-minute or, whatever time frame that you're trying to trade on. However, I'm not a trader. I'm in DeFi. I'm a buy and hold long term. And so I invest off fundamentals and data. And that with crypto is, for me, the reason I gravitate to it so much is a lot of that is transparent. Whereas in traditional markets, you have to pay a lot of money to get access to the really good data. Whereas in crypto, all of it is on chain. As of right now, we're starting to see a movement into private chains like Canton Network and Zcash, that have privacy layers that don't allow people to see who is moving and investing into, different projects or, what from one account to, moving of liquidity from one account to another. A lot of that transparency is starting to go away. And reason being is as institutions are adopting this, they are wanting that to have siloed networks, like Bank of America and Wells Fargo want to have interconnected networks, interoperability, so that they can send liquidity and send value back and forth. However, they don't want everyone having visibility of what is happening with the accounts under their care. So that is what I'm investing in. Is I am investing in what banks, institutions, and governments are investing in. I don't care what the price does short term. Are they all going to be winners? Absolutely not. However, all you need to do is hit one or two, of those Microsofts or Googles or, Amazon or whatever. You can be wrong 9 times. And if as long as you get one right, it could be life-changing money. So that is kind of how I'm investing. I mean, what are you doing, Taylor, to, try to lock in your value and, try to maximize your gains in this kind of uncertain market that we're dealing with, both traditional and crypto?
So I'm trying not to hold any cash as much as possible. I'm like, for example, I have to rebuild my house that burned down. So I'm going to put more money into my house because I don't want to hold cash.
Cocaine and heroin?
Cocaine and heroin are good.
Always a good investment.
Bullets are a great investment.
Yes. No, I bought most of my ammo at what was it? 5.56 ammo was about 14 cents or 12 cents a round. It's up to like 50 cents a round now.
Yeah.
Even if you buy it in bulk. So, I mean, yeah, my silver and my ammo investment has probably been my best performers. I bought most of my silver under $12. And so, yeah, my ammo and silver is better than my crypto investing.
Yeah. So the reality is, what is happening right now is we have a huge problem in the United States and throughout the world in the sense of our governments are basically out of control. They're spending way too much money. They, you know, even with Trump, what I thought he was going to do this second term, he's turned out to be a complete disaster. But um, I thought he would try a little bit to get spending under control, but with Big Beautiful Bill, he went completely the opposite. I think the United States government and governments around the world know the gig is up. The only choice they have is to inflate currency, because that's the only way they're going to keep power. Is they're not going to allow a negative thing to happen. So holding cash is the worst thing you can do right now. And so where you put your money, if you're concerned because things are, stocks are overvalued, well, then you need to look towards like precious metals. Precious metals right now they are doing very well. They're still making all-time highs, but even owning shares of companies is as long as inflation keeps going, because these companies aren't becoming more profitable. The reason why we keep breaking all-time highs is because the government keeps spending. And as they keep spending, this is the hard thing for people, because the regular Joe, that's they're all. I've been investing pretty much all year on every single one of them. And what I want you guys to understand is if the government continues to spend as it is, it's going to devalue. And now the problem is most people that are not wealthy, they don't have a bunch of assets, younger people, they're really struggling right now. And that the reason why is your wages are not keeping up with inflation. If you don't own assets, you're being priced out consistently from purchasing assets. And so you're running into this problem of I can't find a good job because the market really is horrific right now for jobs. But on the flip side, you can't really go buy assets because they aren't coming down in value, which they normally do in times like this. And if you look at like Michael Burry, the guy that did the Great Short in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
He just got completely out of the market because he's like, it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't. It's not based on fundamentals anymore. And so people who, I call it the Great Divide, those people who have assets, the older generation, are getting filthy rich. It's the saddest thing to watch. I'll have these people come in and we're like, oh, we're worth $5 million. Like, we've just had all these, shares of these companies, and they just keep going up. On Friday, my consultation with somebody was, they came to America in 2009, and they're like, we had $13 and we just have been buying stocks, and stocks just go up. And I go, well, yes, they are going to go up because our federal government bails out the market whenever it goes down. But there's a consequence to that. And the consequence is, if you're going to continue to benefit the rich, then what ultimately starts happening with younger generations, they're just going to stop working. They're not going to apply themselves. They're not going to try to build anything. And your country's just going to fall apart. And I can't tell you how many older people will come in and complain about the younger generation, how they won't work. And
what's the incentive?
Exactly.
It's like I can go to work, freaking barely scrape by, own nothing my whole life, and or I can sit on my ass and the government will pay me.
Yeah, and so if you look at what's happening right now, is like basic services are becoming almost impossible to get because people can't go get a job where they're making $15 an hour and live. And so you have this really big problem in the country where, I'll have clients come in, I can't find, a good medical institution to treat me. And, I have to keep, I can't explain to people what's going on. I'm like, well, the problem is baby boomer generation, you want all the wealth, you want to pass all these laws that continually benefit your generation. But there's a trade-off to that. When you do that, when you force the money to benefit you, then the younger generation is just going to eventually just slowly stop working, and you see it kind of fading out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you won't have anybody to provide services to you. And so you'll have all the wealth in the world, but you won't be able to buy anything with it.
Oh, and I mean, I'll be honest, I've kind of been contemplating, for that reason. I mean, I'm retired, but, not that I'm independently wealthy or anything, but I've thought about, moving to another country where the dollar goes further, go to the Philippines, go to Thailand, go to Central America, something like that, to where, I can make $4,000 or $5,000 a month and live a lot better, live a better quality of life. And, you're seeing it a lot, with expats, and, a lot of people are picking up on this.
Yeah.
Costa Rica is a huge destination for European countries in America.
Right.
And prices have skyrocketed there, because of it. When I first looked at it, like about 10 years ago, super affordable, but it's gotten so popular that, I mean, now it's, home prices are very similar to the US. And, it's kind of gentrified the whole country to where locals almost resent, what they used to welcome because of the money and stuff like that and jobs. But now none of them can afford, homes and, things like that. So, it plays into exactly what you're talking about, where if people don't feel like working is going to improve their quality of life or their family's quality of life, the incentive to work ceases to be an incentive.
Yeah. And so, so what you have in these type of situations, this is usually, like, if you're paying attention to history or anything, this is what we call a downfall of a civilization, is when you have this kind of environment where a small group of people get extremely wealthy and benefit off of the system, mm-hmm. and the rest don't. Eventually, that group that's supposed to prize, they're just not going to, like, one of the things that I'm doing with rebuilding our house is I am making it larger because I understand now that my kids just can't move out into the world and find a home. Like my generation, we were like the last to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But kids today can't do that. You have to provide housing for them. I remember one day in my office.
So you're making a compound?
I'm making a compound. I'm building it out. So, but like the idea is like everybody pretty much around me lives in multi-generational living now.
A lot of cultures have done it for like forever. Middle Eastern cultures, Latin cultures, a lot of them have multi-generation in the same house because it cuts down on the cost of living. It allows them to invest more, start businesses. They have a better support structure where the older generations are taken care of, and at the same time, they help take care of the younger children. So you can save on daycare. There's a lot of benefits to it. And it might be a good thing in kind of culturally or societally. It could have a very positive impact, in my opinion.
Yeah. The reality of the situation is, if you have kids that are coming up there later, like, you cannot expect them to go out into the world and be able to make it like you did. It is a completely different world now. You can't make $20 an hour right now and survive. Like,
I couldn't be retired right now if I wouldn't have, bought my property with cash and, built my cabin myself. So where I don't have a mortgage. I mean, with the price of mortgage and rent and stuff like that right now, it would take probably, a good portion of my retirement check just to pay rent or a mortgage.
Yeah. So it's like, you have to look at this as a situation of going, okay, what can we do to help, your own family out? Because that's the only, way that you're going to really make it. It's hard because who would be really nice to listen to this would be the baby boomer generation. Because, if you're older and you're watching your children or grandchildren really struggle and go, they just won't work. Well, Maybe it's more complex than that, that you just aren't really thinking it through and understand that they're growing up where they can't just go do what you did. It doesn't make any sense in the situations that they're facing because, I mean, when I was in college, my rent was $500 a month. I lived in a room with somebody. Like,
Yeah.
it's like it was a place that I had to, be with somebody. But that same kind of situation now that you're looking at is well over $1,000. And you're trying
Wages have
to,
doubled,
yeah,
and
and
inflation has, hurt it even worse.
exactly. And so you have that situation where people just can't do the things that we did back in the day. And just food costs. I remember I could easily get by with $200 a month for food.
Shit, I'm a single guy, and I spend that in a week.
Exactly.
I mean, easily.
Yeah. And you eat very little compared to most people.
Yeah. No, it's just, yeah. I mean, I eat once a day for the most part. I have, my tea in the morning. I have, a good quality, dinner. But for the most part, yeah. I mean, unless I'm out doing a bunch of physical stuff, I only eat once a day. So a $200 grocery bill, in my weekly trip to the grocery store is not out of the question. So I'm spending, as a single guy that eats once a day, I'm spending $800 a month, a minimum, on groceries,
Yeah.
which, not too long ago was half that.
Yeah. And we're just talking about the necessities to get by. So housing, food, and then just getting around. A vehicle today is so much more versus, just 15 years ago, the costs have more than quadrupled. And that includes insurance and everything else. So you take all these things into effect. When I'm meeting or I'm doing a seminar, I'm trying to explain this great divide that's happening. The wealthy are so wealthy that it's shocking. Like, people come in that, older people, and their 401k is up, 1,000% in the last 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, they're like, oh, I only put like 400,000. Now it's well over 4 million and we pulled money out. It's like, well, that's great for you.
Yeah.
But the reality of what is causing that isn't because the corporations that you're invested in offer that much more value.
Mm-hmm.
It is because the way that our government is running is they're taking, taxes and giving those taxes to wealthy people,
Mm-hmm. To invest more.
Yeah. So, because like people go, oh, no, well, our biggest part of our budget is the military.
Mm-hmm.
And the military, it isn't going to the servicemen. Their wages haven't increased, tenfold.
I can attest to that.
It is going to, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all these corporations to make weapons. And those weapons, they just keep charging more and more for them. Actually, it's one of the analysis that was done that if we ever really got into a real war of attrition with another nation, we couldn't fight, because Russia can build a bomb for a few $1,000s. We have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Because our whole system is designed right now to get profits to these corporations, the military industrial complex. And on the flip side, they don't really produce things that are that much more efficient than just regular artillery was before.
Well, honestly, it's kind of money laundering, because they're taking our tax dollars, they're giving it to these, corporations, and the corporations have lobbyists that, are, lawyers basically, that understand the laws on how they can filter a lot of that back to reelection funds and, other things, for these politicians. It's, what happened with insurance. It's what happened with the military industrial complex, with big pharma, with all these different, kind of genres that have, a vested interest in making money. Is
Yeah, I think
they have people in Washington that their sole job is to ensure that they have favorable legislation and favorable access to government contracts and government subsidies.
yeah, one of the biggest ways to see why this is such a problem is look at our health industry.
Mm-hmm.
America's health is horrific. If you don't believe me, just get on a plane, go to any other country in this world,
Mm-hmm.
and you will be shocked at the difference between the size of people. Like you go around in America, everybody is almost morbidly obese.
Yeah.
It is very sad to see. And then you get on a plane, even just go to Europe. Like we went to Europe, we went to Ireland, and we ate everything that like we ate like four
Well,
times a day.
I'm part Irish. That's because all they eat is potatoes and drink whiskey.
Yeah. And I lost weight eating way more than I normally eat in
Yep.
Ireland. And I was like, I surely had gained weight. I actually came back 6 pounds less in 1 week. And I don't know the food there. Usually when I eat now, I don't eat a lot because it hurts my stomach will start to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what's going on. So I eat sparingly.
It's the quality. My ex, she got me a lot more aware about eating clean. Most of the meat that I get, I source locally because I want to know what it was injected with, how it was processed, stuff like that. A lot of hamburger, they use bleach and all kinds of other stuff in it. The cheaper stuff. Most of the foods, the pharmaceutical companies and the medical industry, they invest heavily in in our foods because if they can legally put stuff in it that make you unhealthy, that they make money on selling you food and they make money on you being unhealthy.
Yeah, because it was shocking. My wife, because she shops all the time, she knows the price of pretty much anything that we normally buy. And she was like, in Europe, everything, because they have basically the same products, except for if you look on the back, the ingredients are way less. But the prices were like 30 to 40% less there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, how in the world do you get to this little island, all these products, all this, all this food, all these, I think it was just like shampoos and different things, but it's 30% less there than it is here. It makes no sense because, it's like, I know all those places don't make it in Ireland. They have to ship it in.
Yep.
And so it's not only in America, but the problem is here because everything is basically one organization owns everything.
Mm-hmm.
They just have different brand names that they put on everything. They control the pricing of everything. And so when you go to the store and you want Kraft macaroni and cheese or just, oh, I want to get macaroni and cheese. Well, the same company owns all the different brands you're buying. And so they kind of get to set the price. There's nobody competing with them. In Texas, we have a thing called HEB, and HEB is really liked because they'll have cheaper costs for things because they have their own local brands and they can actually compete on prices and force the companies to sell things cheaper in their stores.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get, the problem is we have this issue of we are taking advantage of the poor and the needy in this country and benefiting the wealthy. Well, how long is that system going to last? And
well,
it just isn't going to last.
One way I can see to fight back against all this is one, what you mentioned, multi-generational households. Two, people getting back to growing their own food. Learning how to have a garden. You don't need a massive garden. There's all kinds of different agricultural ways to grow things. to where, vertical and, a lot of other, ways that where you can grow, different vegetables. There's one called the Three Sisters. It's corn, green beans, and squash. You can grow them all in the same box, and they actually benefit each other. Like beans put nitrogen back in because corn sucks nitrogen out. So it helps balance, kind of that ecosystem. But locally sourcing your food is you're going to get a better quality food. You're going to get a more nutritious food. Growing your own stuff, you're going to save a lot of money. Especially if you have multi generations living in the same household that's helping you, maintain it. And you're just going to have an overall better quality of life, and you're going to teach your kids, your grandkids, and, the different generations how to be self-sustaining and not reliant on a government, for the basic needs, shelter, food, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So all this to say, so, well, where are we going? So if you are just holding cash and holding a bunch of cash because you're scared things are going to come down, well, I mean, it very well can. The stock market is, but the stock market isn't the only place to invest. You got to own things that grow in value. Like Mike, you said, you own silver. You have the actual silver. Crypto most of these crypto projects are crap. Find things that actually add value to the system and can actually work. Those are going to be your best bets going forward, because at the end of the day, any technology that anybody invents right now for crypto is, in 2 years, there's going to be something better out there.
Yeah.
And so understanding those kind of concepts, but understanding you're losing probably 5 to 10% a year in inflation on your cash. It's a guaranteed loss to keep holding it.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Dad a couple of days ago, and he was talking about Grandma and Grandpa, and and just without getting into details, basically talking about investing and stuff like that. And I kind of planted the seed with him where it was just holding cash and just 100% cash assets are probably long term not good. Short term, obviously not a big deal, but long term, you're definitely going to see the value and the buying power shrink. So that's not something that you want to be exposed to. Like somebody like me that retired at 40, I'm 51 now. I probably still have 30, 40, 50 years or more that I need to survive. Just relying on a military retirement is not going to be sustainable. The cost of living adjustment is not going to outpace inflation, and everything else, that we're dealing with. So, that's something that we need to be cognizant of. Even some of us that are older, we're not going to have the same, social security. I think that there's going to be some very ugly truths that are going to come to everyone's realization here in the very near future, because it's not sustainable.
Yeah, well, you've lost 22% of your purchasing power of Social Security since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Social Security will be around, but it's going to be a fraction of what it is today.
Yeah.
They're going to have no problem paying your Social Security check, but it's not going to be anything that's going to get you anywhere. So if you're thinking, I'm just going to live off Social Security, you got another thing coming.
I actually saw a post. Let me see if I saved it. No, I didn't. But basically, in a nutshell, what it was is if you would have everything that you paid into Social Security, if you were able to just hold that and put it into basic investments that earned you 5% every year. I forget the exact amount, but I'm wanting to say that I think it was saying that you get a Social Security payment of like $2,500 or $3,000 a month, just on average. But if you would have invested it and gotten a 5% return annually throughout your working life, then you would get $95,000 a year because it would be worth almost $2 million. So, basically by giving it to the government, you lost a very, very large portion of the earning over the years and what you're going to get paid out, when the time comes. And they keep changing, the year that, or the age that you can start collecting. So,
yeah. And the reality of the situation is it won't be anything it is today.
no.
Because they don't increase Social Security with actual inflation. And the inflation cost, when they're doing it every year, they don't include fuel and food.
Mm-hmm. Two of the most important things.
Yeah. And then you have to trust the government's numbers on inflation. And everybody knows that what they say the inflation rate has been isn't close to what it actually has been.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, well, I guess we're coming to an end here. I don't want to give everybody a heart attack that's watching this going, oh my gosh, the whole world's ending. The reality of the situation is you have to be proactive and think through the situation.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. You want to kind of give your closing thoughts on, kind of where we're at and, kind of summarize what you are personally doing to, where you're, and I know you kind of touched on it, but where you're putting your liquidity to try to mitigate, any downside to your buying power and, your nest egg.
Yeah. So like right now, even with, I still am investing in crypto, but I'm watching whether it's bullish or neutral or bearish trend. Like if Bitcoin goes bearish trend, I'm going to convert most over into, the lending that's available and wait until things come back. We're in the cycle where Bitcoin usually goes down for a year. And so, I don't think we've hit the bottom yet for Bitcoin. I don't know. I mean, it could come back up, but I think also at the same time, you got to be understanding that Bitcoin goes through these cycles, and I don't think we're going to have a crazy blow off top anytime soon.
Bitcoin to 200K.
Yeah. I think we got to about October 10th because that was the all-time high, and usually it takes a year to hit the all-time low. I think sometime in October is when you'll probably experience the low point. But in the meantime, the markets look like they're going to hold up until we have a black swan event. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but when that happens, it's going to happen quick. And that's why I would not say throw everything in the market right now, and just be wise with your capital, but don't throw it all into, don't hold cash. Cash is going to be your worst enemy right now.
Cash is trash. So basically, and I'm far from a financial expert, but basically what I've done is DeFi. Is I'm all in on DeFi. All my crypto that can earn a decent yield, I have deployed into DeFi. Mostly lending, staking, full range pools. Things that I keep exposure to. Price appreciation, things like that. Full range pools. It actually helps mitigate, especially in a down market. Because especially in a stable crypto pair, it helps to mitigate the downside because it's constantly buying off one and selling off the other. So you don't get as much upside if it pumps, but you don't get as much downside if it goes down. And as it goes down, you end up with more of the crypto asset. So like one of mine is an ETH USDC pool. So as the price of ETH goes down, it actually sells off USDC for more ETH. So I'm actually building a better position into Ethereum. And then, of course, if the market turns around, it does the reverse. If ETH pumps, it's selling off ETH into USDC. But the whole time that these markets are going down and sideways, I'm going to be earning yield. 10, 20, 30% or more on those pools. And I can just not worry about it. As long as I'm bullish on those assets, I can sit back and let those assets stack. And then, if they do, end up pumping later on in October, like, Taylor's talking about, or whenever they end up doing that, I'm just going to have more exposure to those assets. So that is my focus right now, is just stacking as much of the assets that I'm bullish on, in hopes that, again, one or two of those, 10 or 12 that I'm invested in hit. If 8 of them go to zero and 2 of them hit, I'll be in a much better position, and hopefully, have enough that I can move that into stables, create my treasury, lock in that, that value, and earn, 10, 20, 30% on stables through DeFi and DeFi, advanced DeFi strategies, and earn extra income that I can then again reinvest into real estate, more crypto, newer crypto projects, things like that moving forward, and just build my portfolio. So, Arrow, yes, Stan, Arrow is definitely one that I'm more bullish on, through locks and pools. Q2 of next year, the new Aerodrome platform is launching. It's going to be multi-chain. It's going to have a lot of different institutional assets available on it. A lot of really cool stuff, and accessibility for retail, removing those barriers to entry I'm always talking about. So there's a huge announcement here on Wednesday. Coinbase is going to be launching what looks to be perpetuals, and a couple other offerings on their natively on their platform. And a lot of that is going to be facilitated by platforms like Morpho, Arrow, and other base projects. So again, these are the things that I'm investing in, hoping that they're the next Microsoft, that they're the next Amazon, kind of the next big thing, the next Google. So Taylor, I appreciate you making the time. I know you're busy. Come on the show. I always enjoy these. But any parting words on the way out?
Nope. I think we covered everything.
All right. Well, let me make sure that we're queued up here. Oh, yep, we are. All right. Well, appreciate Stan, Food is Life, Rifleman. I appreciate the whole crew, everybody showing up for the live stream. Please like and share the stream. We do this for love of the game. We just want to help people be successful and try to navigate, these turbulent times. But until next time, Veteran Crypto out.